Welcome back to Open Heart. Today's episode is a special one, a heartfelt conversation with my dear friend Jay, whose friendship has been such a powerful and grounding presence in my life. While I'm lucky enough to know him as my emergency phone a friend, Jay is also an incredibly accomplished interventional cardiologist and researcher. He's a leader in our local medical community and is nationally respected for pushing the boundaries of patient care and innovation. In this conversation, we get to know Jay deeper as we explore what it means to truly feel seen, how to create space without needing to prove anything, leading from an open heart in cath lab and in life, and the magic of sharing openly during life's transitions. We're so lucky to have Jay here. Let's get into it. I just get the giggles around you. I don't know why. I feel like it takes a solid 30 seconds before I'm like, hello. Do you feel safe here? Like you're in a cath lab kind of safe, or?
I do not feel cath lab kind of, but is cath lab safe a good safe? Always? I mean, it is. I mean, it's comforting. It's where we do our best work. But, I mean, you've got to have other places of safety. So
I do like that. And that brings me to my first question for you. You are the friend that I have consistently gone to when I'm like, oh, shoot, I did something and I don't want to tell anybody about it. Or I'm thinking about doing something, but it's kind of out there. And I feel like you have this very comforting presence and you're extremely non-judgmental and you give amazing advice. And I noticed that you also do that with people in your work environment.
I think in our discipline and in our job, and then in life, people are going to fail and they need to be safe with failure in order to make great strides. So however you can support people, make them feel safe, so that they can, one, ask questions and not be afraid to grow, and then go out and start a podcast or go to Costa Rica or take a new job, or whatever the case might be. I mean, all of these things that we do, I mean, think about Grunzig and the first balloon angioplasty. That was pretty bold. Okay. And he could have failed.
You're right. So it does start with feeling safe enough to take a step and then having a support system that's like, okay, you got this.
And not just it's got to be a multi-layered support system too. I mean, you've got your family and you've got your work folks and you got your friends. So it's got to be multifaceted.
How did you learn the importance of this?
Having it and not having it and trying to rebuild it. I think in any training situation, if it's a good program, you came from a great program. My program was great. Very appreciative of that. We were pushed, but I think there was always a little element of safety there, right? We had a little coverage. I mean, that's what I take. And I still talk to those people that I trained with and took training from. And then having a couple of different experiences where you kind of look around and you're like, whoa. So it's just me. You never want to feel that, and you never want somebody else to feel that. So trying to then create something where it's going to be a little bit better environment for all, that would be the goal.
I do admire that, you are a very busy interventional cardiologist. You have a robust clinical practice. You're also extremely academic. You have an MD, PhD, and you do a lot of research, and your interests are microcirculatory dysfunction, right? And you do all these things, but you also see the value in the people around you, the community that you build. Can you tell us a little bit about how you recognize the importance of doing that in the cath lab?
You've been in the cath lab, you operate in the cath lab. When it's a good case, it's a bad case. It takes a full team to do it, and to perform something. So if I even take a step back from that, as I started to go through some things after surgery and really try to understand who I am and what is going to be my value and what am I going to fall back on, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to be a lone wolf. Some people can, but very few people can be a lone wolf. So what could I do to then create that environment where excellence and service are going to be pervasive, and making sure that everybody sort of understood that? And I've heard a couple of different people talk about sort of some different military branches, and I don't want to create any enemies or anything, but I've always thought it's interesting how the Navy SEALs really don't speak when they're carrying out a mission, and they all know. And so that's sort of the ultimate, kind of the holy grail is, can you have a cath lab like that? Can you have my son's starting playing football. Can you have a family unit like that? All of these things where everyone just sort of knows and they're interacting. And to do that, I think it takes a ton of communication, a ton of time, and a ton of comfort and safety.
And so you recognize the importance in investing in individual people within your team.
Absolutely. because they're not all the same, right? I mean, we have people that just started in our cath lab. They're 23, 24. I mean, they're going to go through multiple iterations. And then you have some people who are 60 plus and they're grandparents. So you're not going to push and pull all of them the same way, right? So you're going to have to know what makes all of them tick and what makes all of them laugh and what you do not want to do around them or say around them. And that helps to build that trust and sort of put it's so slow that you build trust and you build competence and you build that compassion, and you can wipe it all out with one fell swoop. So you really have to be careful to not do that and have that group where you can where you've built that trust over time.
I think it's really important because it seems very intuitive for you and for me, right? Like, I think we recognize the value of working within an ecosystem that feels very safe and comfortable together, but it's not something that we're taught in training. So it's really interesting because I learned my first cath lab experience that if everyone feels safe enough to speak up, that's us doing something right. And I've been in places now, especially as I travel for work, where I see the techs and nurses like kind of brace themselves and like they're hesitant to say things. And I'm like, why aren't you speaking up whenever you see something? And they're afraid of what the reaction of the person in command would be. And I almost feel like that's a totally outdated model, the hierarchical system in medicine. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. I mean, I guess my question to you is, you've seen those. My question back to you, you've seen those models where it's a very hierarchical, and sometimes it works, I guess, but what have been the most successful cath labs and how did they create that a little more level playing field? I mean, what did people do, especially as you travel and you see some cath labs that are balanced, some that are not? Like, what do you think created that?
Setting the tone. And, in the cath lab, I guess physicians, we're considered the leader of the cath lab, right? We're kind of steering the ship. And but I don't see it as like a unilateral leadership. I almost see it as like a relationship that we're building with the team. And I know there are people with 30 years of experience in there. And I know people are more familiar with their equipment. They know certain patterns that they've seen and they understand certain things. And so whenever they speak up, I feel so good about myself because I'm like, they feel comfortable around me and they feel safe to do that. And oftentimes it helps the patient. And it's also having that confidence within ourselves to know like, hey, you know what? By having someone show me something that I didn't see, like it doesn't diminish what I know or my ability, right? And if anything, it makes me a better doctor because I'm better able to help my patient. And it's almost like disconnecting the ego from the situation, which I think is so important in the work that we do.
Yeah. So the first part of that is, how do you establish that if you're doing a locums thing and you're there a few days? How do you establish that? I mean, for me, it takes me a ton of time and I'm very slow moving in that regard. So I'm curious, your crash course, like, boom, here I am, Priya.
Here I am, rainbows and sparkles. Before we dive back in, I want to thank one of our foundational sponsors for Open Heart. Today's episode is supported by Don't Miss a Beat, beautifully designed educational manuals for the cardiac cath and EP labs.
I created Don't Miss a Beat for healthcare workers who want support without judgment, to feel seen, guided, and encouraged no matter where they're starting from. These books are my way of reaching the people I can't touch directly, meeting them where they are instead of talking over them so no one feels alone in the learning process.
I wish I had these manuals when I was a fellow. These guides make complex concepts simple so you can focus on what matters most, showing up with skill and with heart. Thank you to Don't Miss a Beat for supporting Open Heart and empowering the next generation of healers. Now, back to our show. Did I tell you about the cath lab in Kansas? So I showed up in the cath lab, and first and foremost, they drove me straight to get a urine drug test because they were somehow concerned about that possibility. And I later found out that they've had some issues with others. And, like medicine is people at the end of the day. We're all human. There are things that people go through, but we didn't start off on a great foot. It was just kind of like, we're going to go take you to pee in a cup, and then we're going to take you to the cath lab. And it's the kind of town where you can't get an Uber. Like, I was sitting in my like little rental and I had to call the hospital and be like, hey, how do I get there? Because I don't have a car and there's no Uber here. Like, what do I do? So they came and picked me up, and I get there and people are just very standoffish. And I think it's like this natural tendency to be skeptical whenever somebody new walks into your ecosystem because you're very protective of it. And Then, of course, the first 3 cases I do are all RCAs, and they all need an intervention, and they all become unstable intra-procedure, but we got them through it, and we got a good result at the end. Patients did really well. And I actually paused during the case, and I looked at the tech, and I was like, hey, what other guides do you have here that you think would work well with this case? And we used that guide, and it worked beautifully. And, every step of the procedure, I was stating the thought process, and that's kind of a habit that I have just so everyone's on the same page. And I felt like I built trust that way. And then the next day, everybody's just so friendly, and they're inviting me to go do stuff with them after work. And they actually told me we're always a little bit afraid when somebody new enters our ecosystem, and we've had more bad experiences than good. And the most important thing for us is to feel safe. And so the second you establish that, you're just kind of on an even playing field.
I think that's so well said. So then the next part of that is, so then what drives that, and what makes you able to do that in multiple geographic and regional settings? What's the thing back there that tips you, that makes you say, I have to establish this, and this is what's super important to me?
Is it even intentional, though? Because I think a lot of this is just reading the room. It's the energetics of the people around you. And I think you're really good at doing that too. Reading the room and understanding, what is the dynamic here? How do I make people feel safe? How do I present myself so that people can understand that I'm here with good intention? How do you actually do that? Because you actually just started a new job as well.
Yeah. And so I had to, I am working to continue to build relationships. Everything's still good. Still in the honeymoon phase, I guess, but still build relationships among, the physicians and the nursing staff and the hospital leadership and administration and regional, so there's all these different relationships. So what I did within the first couple of weeks of working there is just have smaller sessions with, physicians, technical staff, office staff, and just I know it's super nerdy to present slides, but
I'm surprised we don't have slides up on the wall right now.
But there were just a few things that I presented that just sort of made sure they understood, and it wasn't outcomes or anything like that, but sort of who I am, where I'm coming from, and what's going to be important to me, and what you can expect from me. Then using that as the start of the conversation, and I say, I don't expect everybody else to stand up in front of the whole group and do the same thing, but I'm going to ask you individually at certain times. And if you're not ready to talk about it, that's fine too. Or if you don't want to say anything, that's fine. But these are the kinds of things that I'd like to know. Just, what will you absolutely always do? What will you never do? Some of those things. So I started that, and then having that, and then hearing the physicians having me have that conversation, hearing me have that conversation with the technical staff or nursing, and then some of the office people having me have that conversation with the physicians. I was like, okay, he's sort of trying to get in on the same level playing field with everybody, but they all knew when I make a decision or when I say something, these are sort of the intentions behind it, so that they don't have to wonder about that. So very long-winded way of saying, I think it's important to, I just state the obvious or state the awkward and say, here's who I am and here's what's important to me, so that that's out of the way.
So the communication is the most important thing, because people can't read your mind.
Right. The communication, but then it's also what's driving the communication. If your main deal is to make as much money as humanly possible, which I know it isn't, but that's tough to say, but people will pick up on that. If your job or if your main desire is to get out every day at 3:00, that's not something that's easy to communicate, but it will be communicated in nonverbal language.
I love that. And none of this stuff gets taught in medical school.
Well, no. What's the main objective in medical school? You get through it. Get through it and beat everybody else.
But what if we turn medical school into a system where it's we're going to give you the tools to thrive and then continue to improve upon what we've already built?
So I'm really glad you asked that. This was not planned. But I was in Nashville with my family a couple weeks ago, and so I got to see Jimmy Kerrigan, our good friend. But we did all these singer-songwriter sessions. It's out of the way of the Broadway and the Nashville and the really loud and that sort of thing. But you sit there and you think about the singer-songwriter community in Nashville or wherever. It doesn't behoove any of them to fail or to beat the other. They're all rooting for each other. and they're all rooting for success. And it's sort of like all success builds on everybody else's, and that creative energy then builds on more creative energy and more positive, influence and more productivity. So to your point, there are industries where this happens. So why can't you make medicine about that? Because ultimately, what do we all want to have success with? The patient. We want the best outcomes for the patient. So why couldn't you try to flip that, make that your primary narrative, make sure everybody's on the same page for that?
And this is also why I love that you're so involved in the education part of things. You do a lot of teaching, you're involved at conferences. And that's actually how I got to know you, through the Texas chapter of the American College of Cardiology. And now you're one of my lifelines. And so I do think like the more people speak out and share that perspective, and it's even, I don't think anybody wants to be in a situation where it's like a rat race, right? And it's just kind of an unspoken subtext to how things have always been done. But I think just even pausing to question, is that actually how we should do something? And even kind of having that openness to like, can we do this differently? I feel like that's the way to start.
When to make the intervention, I guess, is the question. Can you start it in medical school?
Can we start it now? Like literally in the cath lab?
Well, yeah. I mean, so I guess if you wanted to start small in the cath lab, what would your first steps be?
You're the one that I'm going to ask this back to, because I feel like you just have that kind of wisdom.
My approach, and it comes from training, is going to be, if you can keep the patient first, then you're probably going to operate with the correct intentions. And I think that this happens too in other industries. I mean, you saw Johnson & Johnson get in a ton of trouble, way decades ago about the whole aspirin thing. And they said, no, our mission is the best care of the patients and our customers. And so we're going to make this right. And so I don't think that it has to be solely isolated to medicine. I think you can be in multiple different industries. But if you have kind of a backbone and a value, and you can make that pervasive among the rest of your crew, the cath lab, office, wherever, I think that you're going to have a good start to it.
I agree with you. And I think it takes me back to, when I quit my first job and I went to Costa Rica to do yoga teacher training, I didn't have like that openness to certain concepts, but when presented with them in that environment, for some reason, I was just like, wow, we already do a lot of these things. Like the whole idea of like a sacred space, right? What is a sacred space? It's a space where there's an intention to do something very good. And it's a space that you protect. It's a space that you keep clean. It's a space where energetically you make sure people are harmonized. And so I almost started looking at the cath lab as a sacred space. And then I'm like, okay, so how am I going to hold space for the people coming through here? So cath lab staff and patients. And it became this thing where I would make a very clear intention in my mind before I walk into the case. And I was already kind of doing it in fellowship. I would give myself a little bit of a pep talk, and like people outside are probably thinking I'm crazy, because sometimes I would even whisper it to myself while I'm scrubbing in. But it was like my way of preparing myself to like energetically hold space for people coming through, because I knew this is like a big thing that we're doing. And as I started to notice those parallels between those two worlds, I'm like, we already do so much of this stuff, but if we were even just a little bit more intentional about teaching people the importance of that pause and presence, could we change how medicine is done? And I don't think it's going to take a whole lot of work. I think it's just literally having that conversation, actually saying the words.
So would you emphasize more the ritual or more of the philosophy?
It's the philosophy, because I think the ritual can look different for everyone. Not everyone's going to feel like they can relate to a yogic principle, right? And I don't think we should ever try to put people into the box that they may not fit into. But I do feel like just having that idea of like, what is it that I'm about to do? What is the extent of the situation, and not minimizing it? Because, we walk out of cases sometimes where things don't go well and we're just kind of bouncing right into the next room. It's like, can there be a pause? Should there be a pause?
So do you pause before cases? Every case?
I do. And after also, like even just washing your hands for 5 seconds, like somehow that it just helps me reset. There's something about the water running through the faucet in the cath lab bathroom that just brings me back. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. And of course, there's going to be all the things that we deal with day to day that we're going to take home with us and have to process in other ways. But at least I feel like I've physically reset in some way. Like, what do you do?
Every morning, there's always kind of the full scrub of the hands. And so I use that time for a little bit of breathing and just a little bit sort of calming the mind, making sure the mind is clear, the hands are smooth. and also a little gratitude that I can use both my hands again, because I think that was a really important grounding part for me when I did have such bad neck problems that I really couldn't use my right hand. So I think that's important. That's really grounding for me. Can you impart that on everybody else? I don't know, but could you create that philosophy, to your point, and almost make it cool again, thinking about the way athletes go into things, Olympic athletes or performers or something along those lines. There's always something that they do. There's some kind of clearing. There's something, it sort of resets to make sure that you have the attention on the patient and you're aware of your surroundings and the people in the room with you, and having that gratitude in that space. Some people are going to latch onto it, and some people are going to be like, you're full of it, Jay. So if you normalize and just start having some of these conversations, and I did, when I was down at my old job, I started having some of these conversations, and then every now and again, somebody would be like, so my daily affirmation is this. I was like, yes,
Yeah.
let's hear it.
Wait, what's your affirmation for today?
Ooh,
Or intention?
The intention was it's it's kind of one of the old adages, slow is smooth and smooth is fast, because I had a lot to do today. I had a lot to cram in. I had a lot of, and when I have that, I'll get a little hurried and I'll miss a step or something. But I know if I just calm down, if I just take things in that rhythm, everything will get done. Everything will fall into place. Everything will be great.
I'm always so impressed with how much you can just be there for so many different people and different aspects of your life, and you take on so much. And I know you went through this really big experience with your spine injury and your surgery. Do you mind if we talk about that a little bit? Because I really do think that's a perfect demonstration of one, just the things that we experience through our work. This is not a job where we're necessarily protected from certain things like injuries. And two, it's like showing the resilience of you as a person. Like, how do you get through something like this, and what does it shift for you? So if you don't mind just kind of sharing from your perspective.
I think going back to what you said, you do all these things, and that was a big part of it, is creating boundaries for, my mental space and my physical well-being, because the way I was going, I physically could not keep up with the demands in the cath lab, which is a little tough to I've always been able to do everything, and I'd never had to say no to anybody, and I could always lift anything and do all this stuff, and to eventually say, I can no longer lift my bag into the overhead compartment, and then have to take a step back to know that I was going to be a year or two to recover. That reset things, which was good, because then it sort of allowed me to create boundaries and say, no, I physically can't do that. And it was tough to be intubated for 2 days in and around the surgery, because I had so much swelling. But what that's done, it's changed my voice a little bit, but it also has given me my own boundary, because when my voice starts to go, that's when I'm tired and I've done too much. So I think having the ability to understand the boundaries, know the boundaries, both physically, mentally, I think was really important. And I'm certainly grateful for the perspective I have now. I'm not grateful for the injury. And you have your own injuries, and we know that these things, you can't just fix it and it gets better. You manage it, really. And so having some of that and being able to create a little space, and to create the notion that it's okay to say no to this, to say no to that. And I love TAVR, and I love some of these CTO things, and just say, I'm going to build a team that's going to be able to do those better than I can personally, and build the TAVR team and other, PFO teams and those types of things. And what I've done for, since college is, study little tiny blood vessels. So why not keep going with that? I don't know. We'll see. But it also has given me the space to think about things, and think about not just, some of these bigger topics we talk about, but to sit and say, hey, have we ever thought about this? Or what about this calculation, or this and this? And over the past 3 months, the the idea generation has been really cool and really refreshing to reach out to people and to talk about super nerdy physiology things, but to have some cool things kind of in the pipeline.
Isn't that cool how that can happen? Sometimes these really big, difficult experiences actually create the space we need to grow.
It is. I wish it weren't so dramatic, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, if it has to happen, and I guess the question is, how do you impart that on people without them going through it themselves, or do you just have to watch everybody struggle?
You know, whenever you were on stage at Sky, which is our big interventional conference, and you were so openly speaking about your cervical spine injury and going through this huge surgery and this just really intense post-operative course and having to basically relearn how to use your voice, your ability to swallow, your body, and all while also, you know, going through the process of just being a person with a family, with friends, with the social life. And you've had to like really rebuild yourself in such a way that I think it's just so brave that you're willing to share that. And I think you said a couple things actually, and you said like a million things that have stuck with me. And but really you said that rest looks different for different people. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
I think it's super important. And I was kind of going back. I don't remember if it's one of your contacts or somebody else. I found some information about, you know, how many calories you burn. I was looking at surgeons, but you know, how many calories and, you know, the times walking and all of these, the physical demands that some of the things that we do put on our bodies that we love, but we just don't really think about or internalize. And so somebody should have stopped me and been like, you know, you've had 2 hernia surgeries, or you're going to have your second hernia surgery, and you've got varicose veins, and one of them has been straight. Like, don't you think you need to rest and recuperate a little bit?
No, we push more.
To do more. So I think rest does look different for different people, and different people can recharge in different ways. Some people, it's going to take 8 hours of sleep a night, which is fine. I just think you have to figure out what it is for you that's going to allow you to rest. For me, it's nature. So I love being outside, kind of sitting and relaxing with all that. That is very, very helpful to me. And at the new house that we bought, we have that kind of outdoor thing. So that's super helpful for me, and it doesn't take very long. That's the crazy thing. And I'm sort of recharged. I can't go back at what I did, and I do know that it doesn't work. But then I can pivot to something a little bit different and attack one of the other things. So that's what it looks like for me. And you just sort of have to grind it till you find it. So I don't know what it looks like for you. I mean, we talked a little bit about a tea ritual. We've talked about, you know, some of the yoga things that we do. You probably much more elegant than I do it. But what do you do, and how did you find what helps you reset?
You know, it looks different depending on the demands of the day, right? And I live a life now where it used to be corporate practice medicine, churn and burn, and I recognized that was not compatible with how I want to practice medicine, and it wasn't allowing enough time for me to reset how I want to show up for patients. And so now I just take on jobs and communities whenever I have the bandwidth for it. And when I'm there, I'm really, really there. But my reset while I'm working full time, taking 24/7 call coverage for 10 plus days at a time looks so different than when I'm doing creative work or expanding in different areas. But I think the anchors are really the way that you wake up feels really important to me. It kind of sets the tone for your entire day. And I learned this gratitude practice from an integrative healer in Austin. And she's somebody I came across along my path of this year-long quest. And you've been part of this quest. You know, I've been experimenting, exploring, doing all the things. And I'm like, man, why didn't somebody teach me this sooner? And just having that mental awareness in the morning, shifting the mind into this like state of gratitude, I just feel like it helps me show up in such a better way. And I catch myself at nighttime too. It's like I did all the cases, the patients did fine, or, you know, whatever happened in the day happens. But I catch myself like frustrated, and it's like held in my body. It's like everything is constricted and my stomach is tight. And I'm just kind of like, just mind is racing. And if I come back to the gratitude practice at nighttime and say, oh yeah, I'm so grateful that this actually went well. And I'm so grateful these people showed up and we had this funny conversation in the hallway. And then it's like my body just relaxes, and I know that it's something really good for me. So that's what I consistently come back to no matter what.
Do you journal in the evening?
So the common theme is I like to talk to myself. Yeah.
But you get it out. It's cathartic somehow. It's either verbal. I do. I started doing it with some of the leadership stuff, and I found that it's helpful. It's also a little organization and prioritization because these things running around and you're like, well, actually, I'm only gonna have 24 hours tomorrow, and these are the two things that have to get done. So let's focus on
Is there
that.
any part of your life that is not organized?
Oh yeah,
Because here I am just like, let me just scatter my things everywhere and float in the world. And I feel like you're like, I came with my checklist. Should I bring my laptop? Should I pull up my PowerPoint?
I think preparation is key, but that goes back to your morning ritual and I think how you prepare. That also set yourself up for rest and recovery. How you prepare. I mean, if you come in, hot on two wheels into a case, it's not gonna. It didn't start well. Who knows how it's gonna end? And then to recover from that, I think is gonna be really tough.
It's like we dig ourselves into a deeper and deeper hole.
Right. So if you can get the right thing, whatever the rest time period is, some people it's 4 hours, some people it's 8, whatever the case might be. Knowing that trying to sleep on a really full belly with a rich meal is tough. Tons of booze or tons of caffeine or too much of something is probably not going to give you a good rest. And waking up in the morning and I listen a lot to Bill Lombardi's podcast, and I've worked with him a little bit and talked to him a little bit. He has this thing in the morning where he doesn't touch his phone until he has kind of gone through his own little mindfulness practice, which I think is super helpful. Because his point is, when have you ever picked up your phone in the morning and been happy? Yeah. It's always something like, So
have you ever regretted just like sitting outside for that extra 1 minute?
Right. Enjoying that coffee, gratitude for the coffee, how you make it, whatever you want to do in terms of meditation. I have to stretch pretty hard in the morning to limber up. And I know you do a lot of good stuff, good body work, but I think if we can impart that on some people, and not just fellows or students, but also cath lab staff too, and nursing and those types of people, because you see them kind of ambling around at the end of the day, and it's like, hey, here's a couple of yoga things for it, or
whatever works, right? And I think for too long we've become a culture where we're just kind of like, we just grind through the day. We'll do as many cases as possible. We'll kind of push through without really pausing to wonder like, hey, like, are you okay? Like, are you physically okay? Are you mentally okay? And I'm grateful that you're willing to even have that conversation, because I know that it took major physical injury to get to the point where you're now like, okay, you know what? Like, we need to set some clear boundaries on what we do. It would be amazing for people to have that openness without having to go through such a big experience.
And when people ask me about it, as I hope that nobody has to go through all of those, physical ailments and so forth. But when some people, I go back to something we talked about a little bit earlier in terms of, kind of what's going to drive you and what are kind of your core beliefs and your values. So what is truly important to you? Is it family? Is it your faith? Is it, what is going to be literally your spine?
What is truly important to you? I have to ask that question to you.
So my two things are excellence and service. And you can kind of go through that Brene Brown sort of checklist, and there's like 500 words. And all of them are good. I mean, none of them you would say no to.
How did you pick your words? Was it a feeling in the body? Was it intellectualized?
Yeah. So actually, I did do this sort of by gut feeling, which I usually don't do. But I sort of went through the whole list and you just kind of keep narrowing it down. And it's actually kind of fun. I did it with the cath lab. I did it with our office. I've kind of done it with some of the physicians. They haven't taken the bait quite as readily, but asking people is, what are kind of your main things, and then the next step is, from those things, what do you take from those when you're at your best? And like, what does your best self? It's kind of silly things, but what does that look like based on those things? And so, and that's sort of your flow state is what we like to call it. So, when I'm in the flow state, it's really, really high quality research or really, really high quality clinical work that is doing good for, the institution, the patients, the research institution, or whatever the case might be. But that is sort of flow state. And that's when I'm really, really in my best spot.
What does it feel like in your body when you get a yes? when you're like, this is right for me?
It's a heart feeling for me. I don't know.
It's the same for me. It's like a tingling, warm sensation in the chest. And sometimes it just like expands into my body.
And it's so funny. Some people are like, some people think it's an eye, a brain thing. I've asked them. Some people it's a gut thing. So yeah, no, mine is more of a, guess that's why we're cardiologists.
Or could it be that you're living with an open heart?
Ah, I see what you did there.
I knew this episode was going to be full of bloopers and giggles. And you said something to me that has basically shifted the trajectory of my own way of looking at my life and has made big changes. Like I've made big changes based on this concept. And I, for so many years, was stuck in the cycle of wanting to prove something, like prove my worth, prove that I was doing good, prove that I'm good enough, prove that I can do it. And it was to the point where it's like I built a life that didn't fit me. And I was so far away from the flow state, so disconnected from that gut feeling and the knowing of like, yes, this is good for me. I didn't even know what that felt like in my body. But I feel like now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm so grateful for that dinner where we were at a conference and you sat down and you were like, just tell me everything. I told you all the craziness, all the things that I've been up to. And you didn't judge me. And you just said, what are you trying to prove? There's nothing left to prove. And it just stuck with me.
You're a very successful person. You've done a ton of stuff. And what's going to be the most important thing to you?
And I think everybody should ask that question. What is the most important thing to you?
So, what is your spine? What are you going to go back on in terms of your values? And what are you going to be happy with at the end of the day or the beginning of the day or whatever it is? So what are some of those things for you that you sit here in this is your flow state? I feel like, this is.
But it's like the people, right? It's like the people that we choose to connect with and the stories that we share. And it's like, I've recognized now that, for instance, creative work, I used to think, oh, this is a waste of time. Like I'm going to have to read another book or, do another paper. And I've realized now that with this kind of storytelling, which is a passion of mine, you can shift the world with one conversation. I didn't even allow myself to explore that, even though it was such a natural thing for me, because it just wasn't a paradigm that existed.
Is it because you didn't let yourself experience those things or you didn't have the time?
I was too busy. Yeah. But I could have stayed on that same hamster wheel, right? And
so that's a flow state in and of itself. Yeah. It's not a good one.
Yeah.
And I find that flow state and mindfulness are very difficult to balance for me. But maybe it's just because I have a simple mind. I think in kind of the true flow state, it's a little more self-centered, which isn't the best thing to be. I think your flow state in terms of work or something along those lines, or maybe it's a project at home or something. I think that's good. But you also have to allow yourself time and the space to be able to be mindful and say, oh, look, my house is on fire. I should do something about that. So there needs to be a little mindfulness for some of those other things. So flow state in the cath lab, sometimes people can get very, very deep into that. And we've all seen these in the complications courses where somebody's very deep and focused on one thing and they totally miss the other part that's going on. So it's got to balance itself out. Or at least for me, maybe some people, maybe you have that brain that can house them both.
Is it the brain or is it the heart? Or do they work in harmony? I almost feel like it's that harmonetic is not a word.
Harmonious. No, I think Harmonetic is a company. Are they sponsoring you?
No, but they
should. They should.
What do they do?
Cath lab, the tabby wire that tells the pressure. You just put a big old tabby wire right behind you.
Do you use the Safari?
Yeah, I haven't done a TAVR in 5 or so months. I don't know that I ever will.
5 months.
Yeah. I don't know that I ever will, though.
Yeah. And I think that's also really important to recognize, like, the boundary comes from you and you're just kind of like, yeah. And I think that's also really important to recognize, like, the boundary comes from you and you're just kind of like, I accept it and I'm going to build a team to do this. And I care about what happens to the patient and I also care about myself.
Super rewarding work. Yeah. You've done a ton of structural work. Some of this stuff is really cool. And that kind of feeds the ego, and
The ego.
that feeds a lot of things, but we have to get that out of the way. And that, going back to, medical school, you're looking at grades. That's the ego, and that's the ultimate goal. So but it's really tough to sit there and tell your neuroscience professor, like, no, I was really in flow state until you got to the brachial plexus, and I'm out. My ego is I don't want to feed the ego.
You know what though? Like for me, it was the pathways in this brain stem and like in the actual brain, in the actual brain, like the way that they cross. Like I was just like, why would anybody like? How do you memorize this, right? And that's actually one of the reasons I picked cardiology, because you can just understand it. It's more of like an intuitive understanding, and it all makes sense mathematically. Like hemodynamics makes sense.
Hey, I'm not very smart. I can figure out a bunch of tubes, though.
Well, essentially, we're the plumbers of the heart, right?
We're not even the electricians.
I know.
Can I go back to something that you said a little bit earlier that I really loved? You said it's all about the connections and the people, which I think is interesting on two fronts. One, you are one of the best introverts I've ever known, too.
I'm an introvert. I am an introvert.
But you still interact so well with people, and you bring so many people together. So I think that that's a really, really good balancing act for you to have, sort of the introvert and the it's not extrovert, but the communicator, the great communicator. So I think that's great, because, we go back to that. I had a bunch of time to read and listen to podcasts and audiobooks last summer. So you go to that Harvard study, and the people that were the happiest were the ones that had the connections. And it wasn't the people that had all the stocks or the $1 million in the bank or something like that. It was, who did you have a connection with, your family and with your community and your neighbors. So I think that that's super important. And I hope to impart that on not just myself, but a bunch of other people. So I think that's the second part that's really important. One is you talk about all this community and interacting with all these people, but really you're pretty good at just doing the solo couch thing.
Well, my question for you is, on the other side of that whole experience, what is a moment where you're just kind of like, I'm back?
So the first one that I usually, the first time that I really, really felt it, and this sounds really silly, and it's, probably only for the interventional community or vascular surgery, I guess, when I did my first perclose, and it was my own right hand doing it again. And I didn't realize how much of my right hand I had lost. And so I was very, very grateful for that. And then probably the second one is, my neurosurgeon, great guy. You get a guy from Philadelphia who tells you what to do and what not to do, and you follow it. And he said, don't swing a golf club for 6 months. Do not swing a golf club. And so it was everything I had to just like baby steps. But then just right after the first of the year, 2025, I was able to get on a range by myself, and it was kind of cool. It was kind of gray, but to be able to hit a golf ball with a driver and hit it straight was a really cool feeling. So those were sort of my two things. So I was like, okay, it's going to be okay. Not fully back, not 100%. It's never going to be 100%, but I'm on the right path. So those are the two main things.
And you're a neurosurgeon. I definitely want to mention this because I remember I think the first time I saw you after your surgery, we met up in Austin, and you were telling me your neurosurgeon recommended that you have to adopt other practices into your life that are more mindfulness-based and stress reduction. And I didn't even realize that can affect the physical recovery from a spine surgery. Do you mind commenting about that?
Yes. So that's a great question. I wish I would have thought to bring that up. So thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that. Hoover, he said, you've got... your nerves will grow back at 1 millimeter per week. And I started to do the math and thinking, my wingspan is about 6 feet, and I'm kind of dead from, stem to stern. And I thought that was going to be, that's a lot of weeks. He said, the only way that you can get all of those neurotransmitters and all the, the things that we learned in medical school to get going is with rest. And the caboose that is really going to be the main player in that is your brain, and you have to rest your brain. And so if you're going to experience that 1 millimeter per week, which is the best you could hope for, you're going to have to take time to rest and recover. And what does that look like for you, and how are you going to build that in? So that's certainly, and I still get certain things, I feel certain things in my shoulders starting to come back, and I still am weaker on my right side than my left, but that's coming back. So I know that that's a journey, but I know that still to this day, I still have to take time to rest and recover. And if I'm going 90 miles an hour for 3 or 4 days, I know that I can't do 7 straight days of STEMI call. I can't do that. Other people can. You're probably more talented. But
What about talent though? Like, and that's the thing, we have to disconnect that from talent.
but I can't do that. And I don't know if that's healthy or safe. So can we build that into the discipline to say, no, it's okay. You know, look at firefighters, look at service men and women, pilots, those types of things. There are mandated rest times that they have. So when you're going 90 miles an hour for a whole weekend, did you give yourself 24 hours to really rest and recover and get the sleep and get the nutrition and get all those other sorts of things that are going to let you just get back to where you were, not recover from an injury, which spine and all kinds of other things that other people that we know have had. So what does that look like for each person, and building that safety into the discipline where it's not about how many cases you did and how many RVUs and how many of this, but it's, hey, I'm actually at the top of my game. And the cases that I did, I knocked out of the park because I was fully recovered and I was fully there, fully present. And I had built this great team. And now it's Friday and I'm going to go home and, play golf with the kids or whatever it is you're going to do. So can we build that?
I feel like that should be the standard.
Yeah. So, I mean, can we celebrate those things? And instead of maybe asking people, what are you up to? Or what are you, and everyone's saying, oh, I'm just so busy. And maybe we should lead with, how did you rest last week?
Yes.
No, I don't know. I mean, having some of those things and normalizing that, maybe that's the way to go.
I think so. My final question to you is this. What does living with an open heart mean to you?
So it sounds like you have embraced that spirit and that journey, and you sort of that nothing to prove, and doing things for your own good, but so that you can serve others. So that's, I think that's something, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like that's something you do very well. I want to emulate that, and I have a very similar philosophy, and sort of living with an open heart is not necessarily mastering a craft, but more so using the craft to help to master myself. And whatever that craft might be, because you can do a bunch of different things, great mindfulness practice, great yoga practice, cardiology practice, golf practice, but using that to really create the safety and the joy to experience life and go out and help others. So that's a really, really long-winded way of just saying being open to new ideas and new experiences.
And would you say to live with an open heart?
I would say, yeah, I think that that one of the best mantras would, a great way to start today would be, today I'm going to live with an open heart, especially in the face of uncertainty or tough case or whatever you might have to do. Open heart's going to be a great policy. I didn't want to put words in your mouth, but how do you live with an open heart? How do you?
Well, but it's all about the moment, right? It's like, how do I get so deeply present and really connect with whatever it is that we believe in, right? And for me, living with an open heart is following that feeling of what is right and that intuitive knowing of what I'm supposed to be doing here in this world and this life. And the more open I become to that, the more I realize like everything is basically the same act of kindness, whether we're doing a STEMI at 2 a.m. or I buy a stranger on the street a water bottle, it all feels the same in my body. And I just know that open-hearted living is not about the performative tasks or the recognition or the ego. It's about showing up and using the gifts that we have, the authentic gifts that come with us, and using them in the world in a way that we help humanity in some way.
Do you ever fear either not living up to that or having missteps with some of those philosophies?
That's the human experience, though. It's meant to be that way.
Scars make for great stories.
Yeah, and it's the fun part of it. It's like how we're supposed to grow and learn and evolve, and it's all part of everyone else's story too. We're all so interconnected that I feel like those missteps are actually supposed to happen the way that they happen, and we expand, other people expand, things just happen on this journey. And I know that we're always guided back to where we need to go. And I really truly believe that that inner knowing is so powerful. And now that like I'm on the other side of this other like seeking journey of the last year or so, it's become so clear to me that that's so important to cultivate that knowing.
The knowing.
The intuition.
Wherever you are, that's where you need to be.
Yeah.
With an open heart.
With an open heart. That should be the slogan. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. It means so much. I wish that every person in medicine or healing modality, or basically any person on the planet, I wish they had this kind of friendship, this somebody to talk to about these things, because it makes you realize you're not alone on this experience of life. And there's so many people that would actually benefit from hearing about your open experience, and that we can help each other.
Agree. No, we'll pick up some friends the next time.
Thank you, Jay, for sharing your story with such honesty and heart. Your vulnerability and wisdom remind us of the importance of slowing down to hear the whispers of our own knowing. Resting is a sign of strength, and leaning into the friendships that hold space for who we truly are. If this conversation resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you have the capacity to be that friend for someone, share them by sharing this episode. As always, thank you for keeping your hearts open. Until next time, this is Priya Rao, signing off.
Don't remember if it was on one of your social...
Yeah.